The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. McNeese Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. Welcome to On the JoB with your host, Lynn Parrish, editor of the Journal of Business. On the JoB is about the Inland Northwest business community, where you'll hear firsthand the backstories from the men and women reporters at the Journal of Business. On the JoB is brought to you in part by McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. Here's Lynn.
Hi, welcome to On the JoB. I'm Lynn Parrish. I'm the editor of the Journal of Business. I'm here today with Samantha Peone, the real estate reporter for the Journal. Welcome, Sam.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Sam, you wrote a story for us this last time about parking shortages in downtown Spokane.
Yes.
What did you find in your reporting?
Well, a few things. One, that parking is a very convoluted discussion. So when we say parking shortages, we're specifically referring to the shortage of available spaces for lease for downtown workers. According to some data that Andrew Rolls, who is the parking manager over at the Downtown Spokane Partnership, that's not his real title though, it's just what he is. There were, as of August 16th, he surveyed 15 different parking facilities in the Spokane downtown area. Not all of them, but about 15. And of those 15, there were only 176 available spaces for lease. As for parking in general, though, he did say that there are 12,000 on-street parking spaces in the downtown area overall. And that, in general, there is parking for visitors, and that what we're seeing is just a shortage of parking for business individuals.
For lease?
Yes, for lease.
And so I'm assuming that the entities that are leasing these are usually companies leasing them on behalf of their employees. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are the effects of a shortage of this type?
Well, there's a few of them. One of the biggest being the lack of leasable space results in on-street parking. Tends to be for visitors and people of the downtown area. That will be taken up by workers, and that also brings into conversation the other piece about surface parking lots. So I lost my train of thought.
No, that's fine. But one of the things that I found interesting about your piece was when you talked to Chris Bell, who is a commercial real estate broker for NII Black, and he talked about having tenants looking at taking space in the city's core and not being able to find enough parking, having the office space, but not having enough parking for their employees, and ultimately looking elsewhere for space and going elsewhere for space. Now, you also talked to someone else who was looking for space downtown, isn't that right?
Yes, I spoke with Jordan Allen from Stay Alfred. Right now he's located on Sprague, and his company is planning on moving next year. He wouldn't give me any details about that, but he said they're pretty far along on a location that they're choosing. Right now they have 140 employees, and that could change dramatically in the future, unknown future time. So for a company that size, finding leasable parking spaces, according to him, can be incredibly difficult. So in the end, he did settle on a place, it sounds like, that
will have the parking that he needs, but not necessarily easy to find, it sounds like.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, good. Well, one of the things that we talked about in the story, or you talked about in the story, was solutions to this parking shortage, and there aren't any easy ones, right?
No. So one of the things that Andrew had talked about was the fact that there are really no immediate answers to parking just because that's the nature of the beast. So an immediate result or resolution for parking would end up being a midterm or a long-term resolution because of just timetables for that kind of project.
Sure.
So there are a few things going downtown right now, and there is the proposal from Ben Stuckert that I'll let you talk a little bit about. And
sure.
But so there are two things that he's aware of that are going downtown. There is that garage going up at 121 South Madison, I
Sure,
believe. That's
sure.
going up, and that is through GVD. And then there's also, as part of that, 60 million multi-use development going on the North Bank with Lawrence Stone. He has some underground parking that's going along with that as well. And so those
Sure.
are the two things going on right now that Andrew is aware of. Yes.
Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. So and those are going to be structured parking as opposed to surface parking, which is kind of what it sounds like the city wants to head toward. As you referred to, I had talked with Spokane City Council President Ben Stuckert about his proposal to expand a tax incentive that's in place right now to apply to development that occurs where surface parking lots exist. So it's kind of this interesting dynamic where there's this kind of almost visceral reaction to surface parking, where there's an element, a segment of the population that wants to get rid of surface lots, but at the same time we're having that discussion when we're having a shortage of parking in many instances. Yeah.
Yes, and so like you said, they're looking at different ways to hopefully develop those surface parking lots in the future into office or retail or structured parking spaces.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now, when you talk about the street parking, it sounds like it's more plentiful, but that they're really trying to guide people away from workers away from parking on the street. Isn't that right?
Well, yes and no. So when you talk about parking, there's two huge factors that go into that. So there's what Heather Troutman from the city calls beachfront parking, which is
Sure.
where people want to get as close to possible to their location. And so, you see that a lot nowadays with just the tree elegance. It can be really difficult to find a parking space around there. And then there's another side of that, which is pricing. So on-street meters are about $1.20, which is per hour, which it's been that way at a steady rate for a number of years. Off-street private parking, that varies. So it just depends on the company and those kind of things. According to some information that Andrew had provided, the average off-street rate for downtown core parking is $2.12. But that was over, I want to say, that was in August, so that could have changed by now. So while yes, I believe the Journal previously reported about 40%, I want to say, of downtown parking on street was occupied by workers, and
Sure.
so that can be a bit of an issue. So they're looking at just ways for workers to have long-term parking, possibly structured long-term parking that is a more effective way for them to get downtown.
Sure. Now, you made a very valid point toward the end of your piece about some offerings that are in place to where people don't have to necessarily park downtown. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there were two good programs that Heather and Andrew had mentioned to me. The first is the city ticket program. And basically what that is people will pay to park down at the Spokane Arena. So they have like monthly passes, that kind of stuff. And then a shuttle from STA will bring them downtown. And that is $37 per month. And so Andrew contends that is the best deal for parking right now in the downtown area. As for the other piece, that's something they're working on, is a van pool service in which, what it sounds like. So
Yeah,
there's
sure.
vans and people carpool into and out of the core. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Now, I thought it was interesting that in the same edition, you also had a story about resolving some parking issues in Coeur d'Alene as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on over there?
yes. So I spoke with Tony Burns from Ignite CDA. And what's going on down there is they are constructing a parking garage as a way to spur economic growth in the Coeur d'Alene area. So once that's done, they're going to hand over ownership to the city of Coeur d'Alene. So basically what Tony said is Ignite's going to build it and CDA is going to take care of it. And what that is with that revitalization there, that will also help the surrounding businesses. So there's 2 buildings. I can only remember one off the top of my head, the Elks, that
Sure.
was remodeled. I believe that is now the Innovation Den.
It is.
Yes,
Yeah,
with
right.
Nick Smoot. And so that's one of those things that's in that area that's being remodeled. So
Oh, that's great. And I thought one of the interesting points that was made in there is that having that parking in Coeur d'Alene where it's being built, which is just off of Sherman Avenue, if I remember correctly, and close to what you'd consider the core of downtown Coeur d'Alene. Different feel than the core of downtown Spokane, but essentially the same in function. One of the things they said about that was that it takes the parking requirement for developers out of the equation because the parking is readily available.
yeah, essentially. And that's what it comes down to, is having that parking there is a huge weight off a developer's shoulders, because they know that there's the availability and there's also the room for their businesses to grow without having to worry about employee parking or visitor parking, that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, for parking, it's pretty interesting, I think. What do you think?
Yeah.
Thanks for coming down today, Sam. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
We'll have to have you back again.
Thank you.
On the JoB is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. On the JoB is brought to you by our friends at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. Ask Lynn a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. McNeese Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeese Wheeler Attorneys.